What's up, y'all? It's your man Ernest, or you love Ernest, back again with another episode of the Ernest Thoughts podcast. Let's get right into it. So, this first topic here was actually supposed to be the third topic, and essentially it was the third topic of last week's episode. But last week was obviously the first, you know, was, was supposed to be. Can't even speak right now. I'm so hyped up. But nah. So last week's episode was obviously, the first uploaded within the 2 weeks prior to last week's being uploaded. I had a lot of tech issues. Before I get into the topic, I'll just say that I had some tech issues. My laptop actually, the screen just went out on me. Now, God forbid this happens again, but it happened literally the day after I recorded the podcast for both of my podcasts. I was, as I do all the time, I edit and then upload. So I was trying to open my laptop to edit these episodes so I could upload it for the Monday, for that Monday morning. It didn't happen. I suffered what was called what the black screen of death. So that's what happened with that. The first two episodes that you saw from last week or heard from last week, those were the ones that, for some reason, were saved onto the laptop. And the last topic, which was this topic, didn't end up saving. I tried looking all over for it and everything, but for some reason it did not save. I don't know if it was if I don't know if it didn't save or it was one of the many things that ended up getting deleted when I got this repaired because this was some hardware issues with a wire that I needed to get repaired. Also, the microphone that I use bugged out. So I had to resort to using this bummy ass phone that I'm using right now as a microphone. I will get a new mic soon. I never got the microphone fixed, but I will get a new recorder. Let me put it that way. I'm not going to get a full-fledged microphone, but I'll get a new recorder soon. In the meantime, I'm using this method and we back with the videos and back with the full-length episodes. God forbid any more tech issues happen. But anyways, I just want to get that out the way. Now, the first topic here, as I've stated before, or I didn't state before, but stated in the title, I'm here to talk about or just share my thoughts about the string of black shows that ended up being canceled um, months ago. Now, this was a big thing on X or Twitter um, a couple months ago, amongst Black Twitter, especially about the string of Black TV shows that ended up being canceled. When this happened, when this topic was first trending, I actually did a TikTok video on it. Since then, I deleted the video because I felt that there were certain things that was said in the video that I no longer felt, or I felt like it was misconstrued in a way that I got it, you know, mixed up. I didn't really have all my points that I wanted to say here. So I'm now talking about it again, and I have the points here. Pretty much, I have 3 points, and some of these, a few, well, at least one of these points is still one of the points that I made a couple weeks ago, but I'm here to expound on it, obviously. And the other 2 points were points that I feel strongly about for me to say, yeah, this is the reason as to why, or this is my thoughts on the situation. Now, not only am I an enjoyer, obviously a viewer of Black TV shows and stuff, I am a writer. So, I felt like my points were I wanted to mix in a healthy dose of viewership and creator. You know what I'm saying? When I was making these points and when I did on TikTok, I felt like I was coming from more so of the viewer standpoint rather than having a healthy mixing of dose when I made my points. And therefore, hence why I'm talking about it again weeks later on here in the podcast. So, without further ado, the first point that I have is the easiest point to make, which can hold true for a number of these shows. They just weren't good. They just were not good. Now, last week, or at least for last week, a couple weeks ago, when I talked about this on the podcast, when I did the recording again, the within the first recording, I actually looked at the list. There was a list of 20 something shows that ended up being canceled. Now, this list didn't have every single black TV show ever that got canceled, but it had a list of 20 something. And a lot of these well, not a lot, a few of these shows, a good chunk of these shows were actually older shows, which to me is, yeah, it's a bummer that a lot of those older shows like Girlfriends and the Arsenio Hall show, a few of those older shows, it's a bummer that those shows ended up being canceled and they didn't go to a final season or whatever, this, or they're still not running. But at the same time, I feel like this conversation was more so focused on recent television shows rather than shows from 20 years ago or so. You know, again, it's a bummer that there were some great black TV shows that ended up being canceled, but this conversation, since it be happening within the internet age, I feel like a lot of the conversation and a lot of the uh I guess resentment of these cancellations that people vocalized was talking about modern day shows that either came out a couple years ago, shows that came out within the internet era. Let me just put it that way. You know, social media era, internet era, shows that came out within that era. So, with that being said, when I say that the shows were just not good enough, not saying that older black shows were, well, I do think older black shows are better than the black shows that are out today, but even the great black shows ended up being canceled. So, and again, good is subjective. What you might consider good, I might not, and vice versa. Or we can both say this is good and someone else might think it's not, and vice versa. So therefore, that statement right there, it's the easiest statement to make, but there is a little bit, just a little bit, but just a little bit of fact to it, of these shows not being good enough to stand the test of time. You talk about, and I'm just going to name a few shows. I'm not going to name all 20 something shows that there was on the list, but I'm going to name the ones that I personally believe um, were on that list and were canceled. And I, for lack of a better word, and felt like they actually got canceled for, they deserve to be canceled. Well, I won't say deserve. Like I said, for lack of better wording, you think of a better word than deserve to be canceled, or there's a reason for why they got canceled. Let me put it that way. So there was that Netflix original called The Get Down that people seem to enjoy. I enjoyed the theme of the show, but I didn't necessarily like the show. I tried to give it a chance. I thought the acting was bad, and you know it was bad because the lead actor, I forget his name, but there was other familiar faces on the show that were pretty good. They're pretty good actors, but on the show they did not do well. So when that show got canceled, I'm like, I'm not surprised. It's not necessarily, and also, as much as I love the theme and everything, um, I felt like the show never really was focused to begin with. Like, yes, it focused on the 70s and 80s and New York and within the black and brown neighborhood, disco era and all that other stuff. They focused on that, but outside of that, they were trying to tell a story as well. And I don't feel like that story was focused once again. And also, I thought the acting was bad. So again, when that show got canceled, it didn't surprise me. Another show that got canceled, Rap Shit by Issa Rae, or executive produced by Issa Rae. Now, I made this point in my first recording. I'm gonna make this point now about Issa Rae's stuff being canceled because there was another show that she's associated with, but she didn't write for, but she is sometime associated with a Black Lady sketch show. I'll get into my points on that and my thoughts on that show being canceled in a few, but Rap Shit, another show that I tried to give a chance. There were a number of shows on this list, either that I did not know of or that I tried to give a chance. And I personally was like, it ain't for me, man. Like, I'm not, simply because I'm black doesn't mean I'm gonna, automatically latch onto it and like it. and stuff. But that was one of the things. Is this thing still recording? I know the mic is still recording or the phone is still recording. So there's that. But I just wanted to make sure the camera, Zoom at least, was still recording. So with that being said, um, yeah, it was what Issa Rae with rap shit. I tried to give it a chance, didn't like it. A lot of these shows ended up lasting longer than I predicted. When I first saw rap shit, I didn't think it was good. It wasn't like I tuned into it at first. It wasn't like my thoughts on the Black Lady sketch show. I enjoyed the first season. And then I didn't enjoy the second season. And then I heard that it was getting, I think it lasted maybe 3, 4 seasons. But it lasted longer than my enjoyment of the show did. Now, I'm not hating on that. Any show that does that, whether I like it or not, all power to them, especially if it is a black show. But I'm not going to then continue watching it if I decide I am no longer interested in said show or my interest was never there to begin with. That's just me. I'm just one individual, you know. I know people get upset because this was one of the comments that I saw around a lot, and I'm gonna take a sip of water real quick. But this is one of the comments that I see and hear a lot of people say, especially when discussing bad black movies or bad black TV shows. It's we don't have the space to make mediocre stuff. And white people got the space to do that. And this is why their mediocre stuff or their bad movies or their bad shows do well, simply because they have the space for error, where we as black folks, we don't have that space for error. That comment sounds good if you're someone who wants to make excuses for mediocrity. I'm not. Whether I'm not saying that we got to be super exceptional, perfect, because that is just, we got to be perfect, because absolutely not. That's not something that anybody can attain, black, white, or not. No one can obtain perfection. But I'm not going to simply just watch a show or watch a movie because there's black folks in it if I think it's mediocre. In my definition of mediocre, or at least when I say something is mediocre, that is literally me saying that it is okay. So when I say something is okay or mediocre, it's almost synonymous. Synonymous. Let me put it that way. Almost as me saying okay. Okay is like one step above mediocre. There's just bad, there's mediocre, there's okay, and then there's all the extra positive stuff like great, I love it, all the other positive stuff, above that. But that's just how I rank stuff. So this whole era of, or this whole comment of we don't have era for mediocrity, why do you want that? My thing is, I will settle for okay for some time. I will settle for okay, but I want at least good. That's the thing, that's the bar that I want. If it's good to me, you got me for life. If it's great, obviously you got me. If it's anything higher than great, beautiful, lovely, just astonishing, you got me. But if it's good, when I say if it's, I, I made a mistake. When I said if it's good, you got me for life. If you got me for some time, it's if it's not good, if it drops to from good to okay, then it's like you're losing me. You got me for another episode or another show. I mean another season, and we'll see what it is, right? But if you drop from like good to mediocre, I'm done. But if you start at mediocre, you don't get the chance with me to go from mediocre to okay to good to, great to whatever else is on this ranking. You don't get that chance because it's like, why would I put myself through that? I want to enjoy the things that I watch. You know what I'm saying? If I'm not writing these screenplays, I want to enjoy the shows and the movies that I'm watching. So with that being said, why would I then, just settle for mediocrity? And we can do better than that. This is not a situation to where, again, I'm expecting perfection from black people. Absolutely not. But I know we can do better than that because I've seen better. I've seen damn near in my almost 33 years well, in the summertime it'll be 33 years, but like 32 years of living, of watching cinema, of watching TV. I know that we can do better. Why? Because I've seen us do better. 32 years of life. It's people that have been older than me, who are older than me, who can attest to the same thing. They've been living longer and they said, I've seen better all my life. People who are younger than me have seen better. So it's like we know we can do make it better than just mediocre. So just falling back on this idea that or this argument, it's not, and I hope it's not an idea in people's minds, but this argument that oh, white people can be mediocre stuff. Why can't we? Number one, what is mediocre to us may not be mediocre to them. Again, that's another thing that is subjective. All of this speak is real subjective being at the end of the day. But that's just another point of saying that is subjective. Like me saying a number of these shows just weren't good. Maybe you thought they were good. Subjectivity. If you look at a white TV show or a white movie and you're like, I don't know why white people enjoy this. This is just mediocre to me. That's still subjective. They don't think it's mediocre. And if they do think that it's mediocre, they still end up supporting it for whatever reasons, which that goes into my last point. So I'm not going to expound on that yet because I do want to get into my second point. My second point being that these shows got canceled, or at least a few of these shows got canceled because all they were doing was reaching for viral moments or desperate for viral moments. Like the show Ziwi, or I forget, I don't know the show's name. It was on Showtime, but it was the social media influencer who's got her own show she has this very blunt style of interviewing people. Believe her name is Ziwi or Ziwei. The gorgeous Nigerian girl or woman. But her show got canceled. Honestly, again, not to sound mean or anything, but that was another show that I felt when it got canceled. I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised. It lasted longer than I thought it would, but I'm not surprised. Number one, I've never seen a full length episode of Ziwi or Ziwei once again, ever. Why? Because all I've seen was viral clips. And this was one of those shows that got more, the bulk of its views were just from social media, viral clips from TikTok, viral clips on Twitter. So when Showtime says, "Listen, we're not getting any of this viral, we're not getting any of these ratings, we're not getting the money, we're not getting anything. Your social media account, your TikTok is getting the revenue from this. Your social media accounts are getting the views from this, but the actual show is or was on Showtime." And I feel as though one of the big reasons as to why it got canceled was because when it did go viral, people went to social media to watch the clip. Again, not the show, not the episode. And I'm saying you might be different. You might have been like Ernest. I did actually go see the viral clip of her and Charlemagne the God, or her and someone else, and her just asking the hard pressing questions. And I did go and watch that entire episode. Okay, you're one individual, and they might be other individuals who did the same thing, but clearly not enough to keep the lights on over at Showtime, or at least the lights on for that show over on the Showtime network, because they felt, listen, and I'm not in these boardrooms or decisions. I don't work for Showtime, but I have a strong inkling that, and if you are in these decision rooms for Showtime, let me know. But I have a strong inkling the reason as to why that show ended up getting booted was because, or at least one of the reasons, was because they wasn't getting the ad revenue or just the views as much as the social media clips that went viral got from it. And they're like, since we're not going to get a piece of this, you can't have a show on this network. Go to Twitter then. Go host that show on Twitter. See if they gonna let you host it. Since your clips go viral there anyway. You go to Twitter, go to TikTok. Since they go viral on these two platforms and some other social media platform, if they do go viral there, go put your show there instead of us having to pay you to get less a fraction of the views that these social media clips are getting, because we're giving the entire episode and people's attention spans isn't, you know, I guess broad enough for that, or people simply just, again, like with everything viral, it's here today, gone tomorrow. Once they got their viral high from watching that clip, they didn't feel the they didn't feel the need to go watch the show on Showtime. So I feel as though that's a big reason as to why that show ended up getting canceled. But as I stated before, with a number of the other shows that I mentioned, I'm not surprised. I wasn't necessarily impressed when I saw it. So it being canceled, it's not a surprise to me. And yeah, there were black shows that got canceled that I really hated the fact that they got canceled. Number one on that list for me is the show Southside. I love that show. It was my favorite show, like on that list that of shows that got canceled. Another show, this show ended up getting its final season canceled pretty much, but another show was Pose. And Pose was another they lasted 3 seasons, and I feel as though there could have been more. I actually wrote a fan fiction break off for that a fan fiction episode and pretty much a series for that show. You know what I'm saying? That what I would have proudly allowed the writers and everyone involved in that show get that, and we could work on all that. I actually wrote something for that. That's how much I was so dedicated to that show and I wanted it to last, but it didn't, you know. Another show that ended up getting canceled that I like, Lovecraft Country. Well, we already went through this as to why that show got canceled. People don't want to admit, and I'm just looking at my notifications. My bad. People don't want to admit to or accept, and let me put it that way, the reason as to why Lovecraft Country got canceled. Um, but there were two reasons. Number one, the topics that they were talking about, HBO was being, for lack of a better word, pussies, and was like, we don't want y'all to we don't want to get any trouble for the crazy stuff y'all gonna talk about. We claim to be a no boundaries network, but you can't go that far. And Lovecraft Country was going that far, and that's why I love this show. Other than the great acting, of course, but I love that show because it was going there. If you know what I mean, you know. If you know, you know, right? Obviously Jonathan Majors is in his stuff right now. So even if that show were to get rebooted, they would have to find someone else to get the role because people would then automatically boycott it just to spite Jonathan Majors. I talked about his situation and all that stuff, my thoughts on that. You can go back and listen to older episodes. If you're on YouTube, go back and watch those videos. Clear cut, find them yourself. But the biggest reason as to why Lovecraft Country got canceled, and the reason why people are, I need to reapply my damn chapstick. God, but no, that ain't the reason why I got canceled because I need to reapply my chapstick. But the big reason and the reason people aren't accepting of it is for some reason is because of the behind the scenes drama. There was literally writers of the show that came out on social media and said that the lead writer, I forget her, was it Courtney Kemp? They were saying it was a toxic work environment. If it wasn't Courtney Kemp, I apologize, but they said the lead writer of the show was they didn't want to work under her anymore. The writers, this was their writer strike before the actual writer strike, but in all seriousness, they didn't want to work under her anymore. They said no, we're not going to. She apparently presented a toxic work environment. It got to the point where she ended up having to write the entire next season, I believe, on her own, and then she ended up sharing said script actually on Twitter. But she had to do it on her own because the team of writers that she had before didn't want to work for her anymore because they said she created a toxic work environment. You compile that along with HBO not wanting to take risks, yeah, they're gonna say, hey, listen, there's your riders are super risque. You and your writers are super risque with this topic, but also there's drama going on behind the scenes. The drama behind the scenes is why Pose ended up having 3 seasons, anyways, even though it was projected to do more. You know, there was drama behind the scenes as well. So I didn't have that as one of my reasons, but a number of these black shows, TV shows in general, but we're talking about black shows. There's drama behind the scenes as to why there's no longer these shows no longer exist or certain things change within the show, and then these show changes ended up being to the point where um these changes behind the scenes ended up affecting the show, and not in a good way. It didn't make the show better. The show got worse. Things either got mediocre or worse for the show, and then that was that. People decided, we're not supporting this anymore, and nobody should have to simply just force themselves to like anything or support anything if they truly don't feel that way. Some people can do that. I hear it all the time. I listen to other podcasts that talk about the TV shows and movies that they like, right? I hear this all the time from, certain members. Oh, I have to watch it because I'm too invested in it. What? I'm too invested in it now, or I might as well keep watching simply because I made it this far. Yeah, I might not be a real fan, but that's not how I roll. When something gets bad, a show, let me put it that way. When the show gets bad or a movie gets bad, I was watching a movie last week, Rye Lane. I'll say the movie name, Rye Lane, right? It's a movie based out in the UK, right? Now, I like a lot of UK stuff. There was a show that ended up being canceled called Chewing Gum that I ended up liking. That was a UK based show. I loved Chewing Gum. I loved that show. Bummer it got canceled, but I love that show. Once again, black show starring Michaela Cole. It was her. She wrote the show. She directed all that stuff. It created the show, all that stuff. Loved it, but it got canceled. Also, there were behind the scenes drama with her unfortunately being sexually assaulted. I believe she was raped by one of the cast members on the show. Um there was this white guy that I guess was her love interest on the show. Forget who he was, but I believe her character had a crush on a dude. Well, I guess this guy felt the need. Well, since you're crushing on me on the show, that means you want me in real life. When that wasn't the case, she ended up getting sexually assaulted by the guy, raped by the guy. Because of that, she didn't feel comfortable continuing on the show anymore. The network said, "Listen, if you don't want to do it, then cancel." You know. So I guess it got canceled, or she just decided not to do it. Either or, it's not a show that is running anymore. And again, behind the scenes drama really affected what went on. But with this idea that, what was the point I was making, right? Um yeah, I was saying simply because I am two seasons into a show or 20 minutes into a movie. I talked about Rye Lane. That's why I brought up Michaela Cole, because they both from the same place, right? But hey, two totally different. One's a movie, one's a show. One was actually good, one was terrible, just to be honest with you. But I was a good 15 minutes in, and I was like, yeah, this ain't it. And saying I gave you 15 minutes of my time. With that 15 minutes, I could be recording this podcast. With that 15 minutes, I could be doing some writing of my own. I could write a better movie than this. within that 15 minutes, not completed in 15 minutes, but 15 minutes of me working on a script, which I do almost on a daily or at least a couple hours or so. So a multiple 15 minutes. But you know what I'm saying? Like with this time that I just gave you, I could be creating my own stuff. So that's how I am. So I don't understand. I don't judge people if that is how they are, even if you're not a creative writer. Like if you don't write screenplays or just write in general. If you're like within this 15 minutes or within these 2 seasons, I could have done X, Y, and Z. I could have done something else with my time. I am going to choose to do something else with my time. I don't blame anyone because time is valuable, you know, and we shouldn't just give it out simply because other people choose to be willy nilly with their time. Um, oh, there go that. Let me not. Let me behave. But no, you know, we shouldn't just give it out willy nilly because people decide to do with their time. Now, the people that I listen to, like I said, if they decide that, listen, I want to continue watching this series that I think is absolutely horrible, but I watched the first 2, 3 seasons and I thought it was good, but after that, it went to complete dirt. But I feel invested in it. If they want to do that with the time, that's what they want to do with the time. Some folks might feel that way about my shows. Some folks might feel that way about my movies. I gave him 20 minutes. I might as well give him another 30 so minutes because it's, an hour or so movie or so, right? Um, I might as well give him that. Or they might, do it like how I do. I gave him 15 minutes and I'm still not in it. I'm out. Or I gave him 1 season and it was, you know, gave him a couple seasons. If it's a multi-season show, I can tell you right now, I have a show ideas, but none of them last longer than probably like 3 seasons. But that's here and there for this discussion. Again, let me not brag about myself. Let's talk about, and until these shows become a thing, I don't feel like talking about them like that. But you have people who are like that. So with that being said, again, people are choosy with their time. With that being said, also let's get into the last well, not last topic, but last bullet point that I have here, and I think this one is the best bullet point that I have for why these shows are getting canceled because I believe it is the most. I believe this one is the most relevant and the most plays the biggest reason as to why all of these shows got canceled. Now, again, you can point to ratings, you can point to the quality, you can point to drama behind the scenes that caused these shows to get canceled. You can point to networks being punks, you know what I'm saying, and not wanting to touch subjects, matters that these shows were covering within their shows. You can point to all of that, and all of these things ring true. But I think this is the ultimate truth. The political change that happened between 2016 and now. I remember, especially during the pandemic, but I remember from 2016 to 2020, there was a big push, or at least, yeah, 2020 before the election, there was a big push to support black everything, black businesses, black creators, which meant supporting black TV shows, which meant supporting black movies, which meant supporting black business folks in general, production companies, whatever, whatever the business is, even if it's not in the entertainment business. It was a big push for that by white liberals and people who follow the word of white liberals. And as they do every single time a Democrat is in office, all of this support for blackness, all of this support for Black Lives Mattering, then goes out the window. Their signs get taken off their lawns, right? Because they don't feel the need to piss off a racist or they don't feel the need to differentiate themselves from their white counterparts because to them, oh, the good white folks are in office now, which means racism is gone. But when the bad white folks, and again, these are their ideologies speaking, not me, because I'll acknowledge, and y'all know this, but I acknowledge racism on both sides. But when the bad white folks, the racist white folks are in office, Republicans, racist and bad white folks, again, all in their eyes, right? When they're in office, that's when we got to ramp up our support for black businesses and black creators. That is an issue. That is an issue when your support for anybody, whether it be black creators, black businesses, non-black creators, LGBT creators, LGBT businesses, when your support for them is so fairy weather to the point where it really just depends on how mad are you at the at the politician in the White House that decides whether you support people or not, simply because they have it in their mind that Donald Trump is racist. So throughout his presidency, his 4 years that he did, we got to support everything that he's against. So he's against, if he's racist, that means he's against black people, right? So we got to now support black people. If he is homophobic, that means he's against the queer community. So now we got to support the queer community. If he is Islamophobic, we got to support them. If he is this, that, if he's against this, we got to support whatever he is against, whatever they said that he was against, right? That was the big thing, especially during the pandemic. But all 4 years of Trump's first term as or I'm saying first term as if he might win again. He might, might not. But as for Trump's presidency, we just put it that way for now. That was the big thing. And that sucks. That sucks because, again, I saw it happening for me. As I've stated numerous of times before, this podcast, the best years of this podcast were during Trump's presidency. It wasn't because it was a bunch of Republicans listening and saying, "Oh man, I was talking ish about Trump just like I talk ish about Joe Biden and Democrats now. I was talking ish about Trump and the Republicans back then." But it was, let's support black creators, let's support black podcasters. And I noticed, like I mentioned before, I noticed that there were a bunch of folks who and by the way, this for the because I just noticed the cut showed. It was worse than this now, by the way. This is another reason as to why the 2 weeks happened. I messed up my thumb for the visual watchers out there. I was putting some stuff together. I was putting a stage together, right? And I ended up cutting myself really bad, my thumb really bad. So that this happened within the 2 weeks that I was having tech issues. So a lot of stuff happened. My laptop stopped working, microphone, thumb stopped working. I know I have another thumb and the other fingers, but man, when you're left-handed and your left thumb is not working, life gets hard. That's all I'm going to say. But back to the topic at hand. Um, this it sucks, as I was stating before, because a lot of folks just stopped supporting black people, black creators in general, especially black creators within the entertainment business. So these networks, especially because a lot of these networks is like, let's just either give any black person a show because we want to show the world or show people that we are woke. But now that Biden's in office, they don't feel the need to do that because all they got to do is say, well, we voted for Biden. And y'all believe that they care about black folks when they care about dollars once again. Also, it was the push that people were having for these black shows. These networks saw the support, the online support, and it translated offline as well, obviously, to these networks or these streaming services, wherever these shows can be viewed. It translated there. And again, people started to do that. Now, the reason why it did not stop as soon as Joe Biden got in office is because people obviously needed to settle in to a Joe Biden presidency. Once they did, And y'all can be dissatisfied with its presidency now, but once they settled in, then the support stopped because again it was because it was we don't need to they in their eyes they didn't feel the need to support black businesses, black creators, black anything. All they had to do was say I vote Democrat, I vote for Joe Biden, the guy who was vice president to the first black president, and that absolves me from being racist. I'm not racist because I voted for a Democrat or I voted for Joe Biden of all Democrats, right? So I can't be racist. Whereas in 2020 and 2019 and 2018 and 2017 and 2016, the support for black businesses became a thing because the same white liberals didn't want their racism exposed. So they're like, let's support them. I can't be racist because I'm supporting this mediocre black show, this terrible black show. I can't be racist. Why am I supporting the show? This black business here. I'm purchasing from this black business or I'm shouting out this black business. I can't be racist. Simply because you support somebody doesn't mean, or financially support somebody doesn't mean that you can't have any type of negative, feelings about them, right? But that is the biggest point. That is the biggest reason to me as to why these shows got canceled. Once everybody settled in, these networks settled in, these people who propped up these shows to have lasted longer than a season, even though with that list, by the way, that list was a real in-depth list of again 20 plus shows, black shows that ended up being canceled, and a number of those shows it told you how many of those shows lasted longer than one season. Some of those shows didn't even last longer than two seasons. A lot of those shows, when I was reading it off again, it was like only lasted two seasons. You know, a lot of those shows got its big break in 2020, but only lasted from 2020 to 2022. We're talking about the modern shows, and I thought older shows that were on the list, obviously, but the more modern shows, again, the social media era shows. A number of those shows only lasted 2 years. 2 years, all it took was for people to get comfortable for 2 years of Joe Biden and say we don't need to support black businesses or black art anymore. And that's on y'all. That is on y'all. If you decide that your support for black businesses or your support for anybody is contingent on who's in office. You only want to support these people because the person in office, although Joe Biden's a wild racist and he's anti-black, you would think if your idea is I'm going to support these black businesses and black creators because I want to piss off the anti-black president, you would think they would still continue on supporting these folks, these black creators. But as I've said it before, I felt it. Other black creators felt it, whether you're in an entertainment business or not, podcasting or not, especially a lot of black podcasts. There was that big movement, especially during the pandemic, where people are at home, they needed voices to hear in their heads other than their own voice or other than the voice of the people that they were living with that were tired and sick and tired of hearing their voices. So they wanted to hear black voices. They wanted to hear other people's voices. So they tuned into me like crazy. They tuned into other black podcasters like crazy. Once 2 years came in by, at least 2 years, or at least the very most, when we put it away, 2 years, once 2022 hit, it was like we don't need to support these folks anymore. Because they know we're not racist. And I put that in quotation marks for all the audio listeners out there, because I know that is farce. My thing is, if you're only supporting me because I am black and not because you find value within my art, whatever I do, then don't support me at all. Why? Simply because I'm never not gonna be black, but your support's gonna stop when you feel as though you don't need to support black people anymore because the political tide has changed, or you did something nice for somebody black and now all of a sudden you're good with all black folks, or you're dating somebody black and now all of a sudden you're good with all black folks, or you finally got a black friend and they gave you the N-word pass, so now you're all good with all black folks, so you don't need to support anybody. I want those who actually care about, or actually like my content to support me. Simple as that. I want everybody to support me, but you know what I'm saying? Like, if you like it, support it, let it be known. And that's one of the points I didn't make on here. But if you like something, a show, movie, podcast, whatever the case is, you have to support it more than just being a simple viewer these days and age. You know, there's a lot of stuff is being canceled now, and a lot of folks aren't like me. I'm a fighter. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of, I'm a fighter in the sense that I still stick around, rather, even if people decide they don't want to vocalize that they support the show. You know, there's some folk who do, but again, 2020, man, 2020, it was a lot of folks. This podcast in particular, it's a lot of people that was enjoying this. Man, one, because I was talking down about Trump, so the Dems love that, and obviously me talking down about Joe Biden, even though I did that, and the Democrats in general, even though I did that 4 years ago as well, still they love that the down talks of Trump, so therefore they tune in for that. But also, I feel as though a lot of those folks who did not stick around, I could be wrong. This could just be me trying to justify the drop off in views or whatever the case is, right? But I feel like a lot of that had to do with folks not supporting black creators anymore. And I make this not because of my numbers, but a lot of the other black podcasters who are willing to share their numbers having a drop off since 2020, since 2016, 18, 19, and 20. You know? So again, when you look at a number of these shows that got its big break around the Trump era, and now all of a sudden we're 4 years into a possible one term for Joe Biden. If y'all if y'all don't vote for the guy, that clearly is it unfit to be the president. But here we are, and it's a situation to where it really is dependent on um, the political like leaning of or who's in charge, the political party that is in charge of the White House. And that to me is unfortunate. Like I said, it sucks, but it's very unfortunate, which pretty much is the same thing. But it's very unfortunate that that's how things are. And I want more black creators to understand that if you're going to have your white friends, your white fans or whatever, have them. I'm not against that. But understand that if you got folks who only want to support you because it was the cool thing to do at the time to piss off, or you think you was pissing off a racist president, nah, man, like that's weird. That's whack. So there's that. But I know we still got more to talk about here. So we're gonna get into a commercial break. Shout out to all the ads I've been getting, by the way. Ad revenue has been real nice to me. So there's that. But we're gonna get into a commercial break and then we'll get into the next topic. Stay tuned.